everybody. My name is Steve Duckfield. I'm with Phoenix Backups, and welcome to our podcast. Today's guest is Amar Singh. He has an extensive background in cybersecurity and risk management. He's done several speaking engagements, and it's just an honor to have him here today. How you doing today, Amar?
Thank you for having me, Steve. I'm very good. Thank you.
Excellent. So, Amar, why don't you tell our viewers just a little bit about yourself? You could speak about you better than anybody else can.
Although I don't like doing that, but if you insist, my name is Amar, aka the guy with the blue turban in cyber. Not that many around. Originally from the tiny little nation state of Singapore, been in the UK 24, 25 years, speak 4 to 5 languages. I say 5 because I used to speak Japanese really well, but these days I get away with reading, writing English, Thai, Hindi, and Punjabi. So yeah, and being in cyber, absolute passion. And then if you measure it in cyber years, I think maybe we are both cyber 100 years old or more. So a pleasure being here.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, about around what time did you start getting into the cybersecurity realm?
Very interesting. I mean, I guess it wasn't called cyber in the good old days, if I may. I come from a business family background, and my uncle started going back now 30, maybe more years, a computer company manufacturing computers in those good old days. So that kind of was the beginning of my love with IT, tech, a bit of programming, etc. So I ended up being a rogue member of the family where I didn't go into business of, textiles and electronics, although at the age of 16, I was in Japan selling textiles and electronics in Japan without knowing the language. But yes, so I broke away, kind of, got into jobs in terms of working for other companies, etc. And then several years ago, started my own organization.
Excellent. Yeah, and when you're talking about being in cyber years, I mean, I joke around with everybody. I mean, I was born in the early 80s, and before laptops were really even a thing. And I joke around, I came out of the womb with a laptop and a Wi-Fi card. That's just how long I've been in IT.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that we like to do in this podcast is really to educate our viewers, and we really like to focus on the cybersecurity part because, first of all, there's not a lot of business owners that are, as far as the non-technical ones, that really don't even know what cybersecurity is. They look at it as, oh, I got a guy, or my business is so small, no one's ever going to want to target me. I don't have anything worthwhile to them or anything like that. So could you speak to that a little bit as to why, kind of debunk some of those myths?
Absolutely. I think the term I've heard before, which someone may have coined, I may have coined it, not claiming credit, is most small businesses and medium-sized businesses, even today, are still insisting they're cyber boring, right? That no one, why would they target me? They only are interested in the big boys and girls. And I think it's a fallacy which is repeatedly debunked every time. And something that worries me, going back to the small and medium organization, is because many of them are non-technical and they need to focus on their business, they end up putting a significant amount of trust in whoever is doing the IT and security for them, right? And which creates the problem of, don't worry, I'll handle it. And the business owner, he or she or they, are thinking, well, I've got an IT guy or girl and they're going to manage it for me.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. I mean, I personally believe that if you are a business owner, I don't think that you have to be a technical person, but I think that there should be at least regular communication between you and your IT person. Them telling you what they're doing, why they're doing it, and whatnot. Because having the blanket, oh, I'll take care of it statement, that would frighten me.
Absolutely. And I think, one example that I give very often is, if you are operating a company in Japan, Steve,
Mhm.
And Japan's biggest natural threat is earthquakes, right? As we sadly know from many visuals, especially the 2011 earthquake and tsunami. Why do I bring up Japan? Because if you and I operate a company in Japan physically and we decide, yeah, the likelihood of an earthquake is low, so we're not going to plan and prepare for an earthquake, I hope all your listeners and everybody else listening in is going to agree that's absolute stupidity at best, right? And if you use that same analogy, metaphor, and logic and say, if you are operating in cyberspace, which almost everybody today is, and you're going to sit down and say, yeah, you know what? We're not going to be a victim to a cyber earthquake. I'm sorry to say that's absolute stupidity, right? So you've got to acknowledge, I think the biggest problem for those non believers is the best way to maybe to put it, is the fact that they believe, as we just said, we are cyber boring, we are too small. Oh, my IT guy or girl, my IT firm is handling it, and everything just goes away.
So I know that that you are a member or owner of the Cyber Management Alliance, and you are a very trusted advisor to a lot of companies.
Hmm.
So if you were going to talk to somebody who was just starting up a business, right, and they were going to get a presence online, what are some of like the best practices, tips, and tricks type of things that you would want to tell them? That you would, you know.
Very good question. Very good question. I mean, we could spend hours discussing this, but I've got some really good sound bites. I think the most important sound bite is protect your credentials, um, because the sound bite is no access, no hack. Very important sound bite, applies to anything digital or physical. If someone doesn't have the keys to your house, they're going to have to break in, hence damage, hence it'll become obvious, right? And the same goes for digital. Whatever business you're doing, whether you're a one person show or you run 50 people, 100 people, whatever the size, protecting the credentials, protecting access is probably one of the most important things that anyone can do. And just kind of tagging along with that for a second, it's the two-factor authentication, one-time password thing. Absolute cyber criminals hate that thing, that control, and it's one of the best ways to protect your organization.
I personally am not a fan of the one-time passwords that come over email because if your email account's been hacked,
Yeah.
now you have a very useless form of multi-factor authentication. Um, and it doesn't work. And for the viewers out there, just to recap what that means is that, you'll sign into, sometimes banks will use it, although now they're making you use an actual authenticator app. But, I mean, there was a site for something that I signed up for something else I'm developing. And a lot of them was, yeah, we're going to send you a code via email to log in. That's great. But if my email is hacked, then whoever else has access to my email account now has access, to that site. So yeah, that's a big thing. But if you'd like, because I think this would be something very interesting to our viewers and everything, could you talk about like the one-time passwords and how those came about and why companies decided to use them and all that?
Absolutely. I think the biggest reasons attackers are succeeding is most people are still making the same mistake with passwords, which is they're difficult to remember and easy to guess. Okay? That's what they are, most of them. And it should be the other way around. So, two factor authentication, which is that one time password that is generated these days on an application on your phone, mostly famous from Google and Microsoft, those were the, I think, necessary control brought in to compensate for the fact that most humans, even till today, are using passwords that are very easy to guess, right? So that's one of the reasons why I would say, if you can, implement 2FA on all your products that you are using, whether it's Twitter, which is now X, email, whatever, right? Because that is a compensatory, really good compensatory control for those many of humans, if I may, majority of humans who are still refusing to use difficult to guess passwords.
All of my passwords are 12345. It's the same as the combination of my luggage.
No comments.
It's a Spaceballs reference. Anyway, uh, yeah, password complexity has been the thorn in a lot of people's sides. You have, take a regular manufacturing company or the only thing that's coming to mind is like a law firm, and I'm not saying anything negative about these companies, and we need them. Um, but the people that are working there, they don't want to have to think of, okay, I need a 16 character password. I have to have three special characters, a number, an uppercase letter, a symbol, my right kidney, um, and all that. So I think multi-factor authentication is something that kind of alleviates that stress, where it's okay, I can put my password as something that I know I'm going to remember, and then have something prompt me to put in, a series of numbers and characters to go forward.
Mm-hmm.
A good recommendation, and Amar, you can feel free to tell me no, is that one thing that I learned being in the IT space for as long as I have is that passwords are great, but passphrases are better. So if you have, because the longer the password that you have, even if you've converted it to a passphrase, it's harder for someone to try to break it.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
you can put in a phrase like, my favorite restaurant is whatever, and you type all that out. Now, that phrase is something you're going to remember, and it's something that's going to be so many characters that, any bad actor is going to be like, oh, really? I have to deal with this?
I think that if I may leave your listeners with again another very important soundbite on this topic: easy to remember, difficult to guess, right? And that's why a passphrase is absolutely the recommended way to use passwords. Mary had a little lamb, you know, Harry space Potter space. Take another phrase from another of your books, right? If you're multilingual, mix up the languages. And if you have 3 or 4 words in a passphrase, you are significantly making it more difficult for criminals to guess your password. And I go back to that soundbite saying no access, no hack. If they can't guess your password, they're not going to be able to hack your email, etc., etc. So absolutely, just want to reiterate a passphrase. And again, I'm not kind of associated with any websites, but I tell most people to use the useapassphrase.com. Right? It just generates random. It shows you the logic that you can then follow on your own.
That's great. Yeah, so, and I think that especially in the business world, this a little bit of go back from my fan. I apologize. I think in the business world, I think that educating the staff and all that in insecurity, and even if it's just the basic stuff like don't share your passwords, don't write them down on a post-it note, don't keep them in a book on top of your desk, and all that stuff. There's a lot of companies that do it. The first company I ever worked for, I worked in telephone sales for them as my first job while I was in high school, and my supervisor had her password right on the monitor.
I'm telling you, the two-factor authentication was developed purely for the majority of humans, because regardless of what you tell them, even today, what we see is passwords are still 8 characters, 10 characters, very easy to guess. And you and I know how easy it is for criminals today to just run a computer, a smartphone that can guess these passwords very quickly.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of brute force attacks and all that, and there's a lot of tools out there. And maybe you can very briefly speak to that. A lot of the tools out there that can stop those types of brute force attacks. I mean, firewalls definitely have those controls in place, but I'll leave it to the master.
No, I mean, sure. As a business owner, go back to protect the credentials. You
Hmm.
should write it down on your desk. Whatever you do, if you protect the credentials, the other thing you can ask your IT to, again, whoever is managing your IT to enforce is account lockout. So if someone tries 3 or 5 times, the account is disabled. It's not ideal, but I mean, whoever's listening in, for your listeners, take a sensible risk-based approach. And going back to what we started the session with, don't blindly trust your IT provider. Ask for evidence. Ask them to show you, right, as much as you wouldn't trust a builder to build your home without going to inspect the building, right? You're not just going to turn up after 6 months and go, thank you. You're going to go there every day. You're going to inspect. You're going to ask for evidence, etc. That same logic should be applied with your IT provider, your security provider.
Absolutely. So there's a big hot topic out there that started, at least about a year ago, as far as I'm concerned. That's when it really started to blow up in the field that I was in. It's called the concept of zero trust. It used to be the concept of least privilege or least trust, and then it moved to zero trust. Can you, elaborate on that and really talk about that? And I know that it's a funny thing, but the viewers out there, I think, would be very interested in this and making sure that their own IT department or IT person is implementing this policy.
Absolutely. I think if I may simplify it, because that's one of my skills, if I may, to take a very complex topic and simplifying it. Zero trust, in my professional opinion, starts with a culture of not trusting anyone, right? That's a really key thing. And again, going back to medium-sized organizations, small organizations, people are there for so long, everyone simply assumes that they are trustworthy, which is fine if you and I meet in a pub, have a drink, we are buddies. But the minute we go back to work, if you or I don't have an identity card, we should not be let in. Very simple, right? It's not about, hey, Steve, buddy, you know me. I've been here 10 years. Let me in. Sorry, Amar. I love you to bits, but where's your ID? Right?
I
And
don't
if
think Amar.
exactly right, and I mean, that it's easy to say, but the reality is because humans are humans, trustworthy, etc., etc. We are more trusting. You can have technology is able to do zero trust today really well, but it's the human element, the work culture element, environment that is probably the roadblock, the blocker to implementing something that means every day if Steve logs in, he must be challenged. Who is he? And I mean, the militaries around the world are very, very good at doing this, right? If you
Mhm.
don't have your ID, you may be the colonel. In most cases, you shouldn't be allowed it, right? And so, to me, I think it's a really important concept, like you bring it up, and it starts with a culture of, okay, if you are who you are, only then can you access my database. Otherwise, you may be working here 10 years, you may be best buddies with the CEO, you still can't log in.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think another part of the zero trust mentality and culture, um, well, let me rephrase it. I think that something that's helping that along now is like these RFID or NFC tags. So your ID doesn't actually have to be a badge that you have to clip on your shirt anymore or on your belt. It can sit on your keychain, and when you're going through into the office, you can just hit that. And I'm not saying people don't lose their keys. I am guilty of it. I've done it a couple times. Um, but for the most part, people are going to keep their which well their their keys and everything and their access, that access card on their keychain in a place where they're generally going to have access to it. The downside of that, again, is that somebody, steal the keys. But there's always going to be a fault in everything that we implement. But I think that it's the best effort that counts.
Absolutely. And I think this goes back to, again, the medium and small enterprise are probably facing these problems more because once they are settled with an IT service provider, they're not going to change that company too often, and they explicitly or implicitly, whatever the right word here, trust the IT provider after a few years, and they don't question anymore. And then I think that's where the problems begin because of that trust rather than zero trust.
And I think that zero trust really does need to. And again, this is my opinion. You are more than welcome to break it apart. But I
Mm-hmm.
think that the zero trust really starts on the physical level, like you were talking about. If you're not able to prove you are who you are to me, you're not getting into my building at all.
Yeah,
But a lot of people out there think that zero trust only applies to the digital landscape, going in, logging into a computer, getting into the server room, or anything like that.
yeah. I mean, I think you've got a cat. I've got a dog who's barking. Um, um, the Just to build on what you're saying, one of the biggest problems in this particular space is that, oh, it's too rude to challenge someone who's been there for too long, right? And given AI, without getting too technical, given what's happening with artificial intelligence, and there are several videos circulating on LinkedIn already where someone is not who they are, but they're pretending to be someone. I think implementing zero trust is even more important and crucial than before, right? I mean, again, one example could be going back to that same analogy of trusting your IT provider too much is invite them in for a meeting, right? One day, see who they are, and invite their technical people. Do they really exist? Where are they working from? The WFA working from anywhere policy may mean today your staff is working from a hostile nation, or your service provider staff is working from a hostile nation. So it goes back to question and start saying, who is this? Why are they working remotely? It could be anybody, right?
Yeah, I had I can't divulge company, previous
Mm-hmm.
company information, but I worked for a company that was an MSP, is an MSP, and one of their clients had a an employee that thought they can do, because they were there so long and they were the quote unquote top employee, whatever, that they could do what they wanted, and he just up and went on vacation to China of all places, and again, American-based company. And as you were talking about a hostile nation, I'm like, and does this person have VPN access? He goes, oh no, no, no. They log in with they use their Verizon cell
Right.
card, their Verizon hotspot, and I'm like, but
Ouch.
but how does that secure you? And then we talked about it, like, no, no, this person has to get in through a VPN, and that should be the only way anybody has access to any of your systems would be through a VPN. Outside of the physical office.
I mean, in 2024, Steve, and this year, 2024, I'm not going to take names, but I think they're either prosecuting that individual or they've arrested him. He was running a proxy for North Koreans uh, to get a job in America. Yep. You can read about it. I'll share the link with you. But if you search it there, individual in America has been arrested recently because he, sitting in the US, was basically being paid to apply for jobs and then via a hostile nation state actor.
Oh my!
So if you're doing interviews, ladies and gentlemen, if you're doing interviews, have some way of addressing to know who the person really is. Times are getting really interesting, and it's a very important topic you bring up. I think zero trust questioning everything, even if you're non-technical, even if you're told, "Oh, don't worry, it's not your area of expertise." Question it. I
Question it.
go back. I go back to that building analogy. If you're building a brand new home, you're surely going to question the builder at some point, aren't you? Right? Or are you just going to accept a completely thing that you've never seen before? So use that same analogy. You're building a home, and any point you have that right to question your service provider and anybody else that you think that they're not being fully truthful.
I think this is a really good segue to another talking point that I wanted to cover, and I'm going to mix and match a little bit here, but um, the social engineering. I think that that's a good segue from zero trust to talk about what social engineering is and how, why people do it, and really how to not only to educate but combat it.
Yeah, I mean, social engineering and zero trust are absolutely linked at the hip, if I may, right? The fact is, social engineering remains today the most, if you want to call it, profitable way, effective way of criminals compromising other organizations and humans, right? And the more we move into our social media world, it becomes extremely easy for a criminal to dig up all the information about me or you, to use that against social engineering to build a rapport. I think the best way to put it is, a determined criminal today, or even a half determined criminal using artificial intelligence and the information available today, can easily launch a social engineering attack, a tailored social engineering attack, which is often called spear phishing, as you know, Steve, right? A tailored, bespoke social engineering attack on whoever they want.
And I think that I think that it's fair to say, and I know I've used this example before in a previous episode, but I think it's worth repeating that um, social engineering is not limited to this, to stuff that's happening online, whether your emails, going to a website, or anything like that. If one of the easiest ways that I know of to gain access to somebody's network is, is the Good Samaritan law, where I can drop a USB drive in a parking lot of a random business, and someone from the business comes out, not knowing any better, wanting to be a good Samaritan, thinking, "Hey, somebody in the business dropped a thumb drive or a USB drive. Let me plug this in to see who it belongs to." And the second you plugged in that USB drive, I now have access to your network, and I
Absolutely.
have access to your entire infrastructure. So it's not only something that you need to protect from externally; it's something you also need to protect from internally.
I think, if I may put it, and related to everything we're talking about, I think being digitally naive, being digitally ignorant is no longer an excuse, right? I think we have gone past the, "Oh, I'm a non-techie and you're a techie." That divide is no longer should, in my opinion, doesn't really uh, matter today. You may be non-technical, but you need to know the basics, right? As much as you know that you need to put petrol or diesel in the right car, okay, and you should know how to inflate tires, regardless of male or female or whatever. I think the same applies to digital awareness, cyber awareness. You need to know the basics. Everyone, my opinion.
Absolutely. And I think that, again, it all starts with the leadership in a business, because one of the things that we are trying to do in this is to also to educate the small and medium sized business owners, even enterprise business owners, whether they're just starting out or they've been in the space for years, that everything starts with education, and it starts with the leadership, and the leadership has to set that example and enforce it. If that kind of education is only brought up once or maybe twice in someone's career at a company, unless they've been there for a very short time, I think that that's a problem. I think that it needs to be repeatedly drilled into people's heads, because you're going throughout your day. you're doing whatever it is your job description is and your job duties, you're not always thinking, is this secure? Is this something that could be causing a problem? No. Your boss is breathing down your neck. You've got this project you've got to complete, and the only thing you're thinking about is that. But if you're doing it in a way, if the leadership now is forcing lower leadership or middle leadership, middle management, that helps,
Mm.
um, to take that to build in some time so that things aren't a time crunch where the employee can actually sit for a minute and think about what they're doing. And then, as you said, ask questions because you should question everything. I think that's a better approach. But again, I think it really starts at the top of leadership.
I think although it's a cliche, absolutely correct. If leadership, if the commander in chief doesn't lead by example, then sad reality is the minions below are not going to follow. And regardless of culture or not, it has to be set. You have to set an example. If you're the owner, you're the CEO. If you walk around without an ID card, if you insist on using a password 123 just because you can't remember a passphrase, then guess what? The minions below you are going to do the same.
I feel personally attacked. I told you my password was 123.
With an exclamation mark, by the way. Yes.
Yes.
So totally. I think you and I are singing from the same hymn sheet. But I think the listeners here, share this with your family and friends. My opinion, digital ignorance, digital naivety is no longer an excuse. People should inform themselves. Don't get paranoid. I mean, honestly, even if you are paranoid, I don't think there's a cave today in the world where you can't get 5G. So at the end of the day, we are in a digital world. We are moving absolutely in a digital virtual world. Being ignorant of these risks, of common sense basics, I don't think is acceptable anymore. People should make and endeavor to inform themselves, to educate themselves, and better protect their world and the world of others.
Absolutely, I agree. And I think, and I really would love to hear this, but I want to just jump in really quick.
Mhm.
Another thing that people really need to be wary of, and something that I've experienced a lot in my multiple careers, is somebody that or think you can trust, or even a manager, saying hey, so and so, I can't, my computer's locked, I can't get in. Would you mind letting me log into yours so I could try to get to the self-service site to reset my password or whatever? And I think that is something that needs to be shut down immediately. I don't think that anybody who is not you should be accessing your computer with your credentials unless that person is standing right there and watching over you as like a hawk. But also, you never know what someone's planning to do. And to give a real world example that's not technical, there was an airplane pilot, and he was on a major airline. He was the co-pilot. The captain decided to step out to use the lavatory. The co-pilot locked the cabin door, the cockpit door, and he brought the plane down into a mountain. And that's
In Europe, yeah.
and that's the same thing that people can do just because you think you can trust them, and you can't. And I'm not saying that the people you work with are bad actors or that they're not a trustworthy person, but when it comes to your digital assets, when it comes to the thing that is bringing in the money for you to survive, you should not be trusting it.
Couldn't agree more. Absolutely. It goes back to zero trust.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I know that some of our viewers are really excited for this part. We would love to hear about some of your real life experiences in the cybersecurity realm, as far as breaches and stuff like that, and all your tips and tricks and all that stuff, and just really giving us some of those juicy bits, and what ended up happening as a result of those breaches? Were security controls tightened? Did they decide to go with a whole new firewall setup or whatnot?
Well, we could be here for hours. I'll keep it short. Um, One thing that comes back to mind, and we've kind of touched on it when we started, there was one organization in 2022, 2023, one of these years. Um, they got attacked, severe consequences. Anyway, after the investigation, the root cause was one of the IT system admins, those folks who manage the computers, had switched off two factor authentication because it was COVID, the connection was bad, and the IT admin was having login issues. Am I making sense? So the admin decided temporarily to switch it off so they could complete their task. Good intentions, not bad intentions, but you can make up the story after this, right? They forgot to switch it back on, and approximately 7 to 8 months later, someone guessed the password. There was no two factor authentication, and the whole organization was compromised.
Yeah.
It's often the small minor controls. Most people think most attackers are really, really advanced, which many people are. But even the most advanced attacker, if you leave your front door open, why would they take a ladder to come through the chimney?
Right.
Am I making sense? Right?
Yeah, I use a similar analogy. I say, you can have the best in-home security system out there, and it's armed and everything, but you leave that front door open.
You might as well. That's it. That's it. And it goes back to the access problem.
Mhm.
If you don't have two-factor authentication, if your password is password 123 with an exclamation mark,
Mhm.
the fact of the matter is, even the most advanced criminal is going to go, happy days. This is brilliant. Why do they need to use any advanced brain power when the door is open? It's so critical. We analyze hundreds of attacks, thousands of attacks, and we've got timelines on my website, of attacks. But if you look at each single one of them, majority of them are using this analogy: the door has been left open.
Absolutely. And so, just to because we were talking about passwords and the
Hmm.
simplicity of them, there was I saw a couple of memes, and I freely admit I'm a Facebook junkie when it comes to my personal time. Um, and it said, I changed my password to 10 asterisks consecutively so that when the hacker got my password, he still thought it was encrypted. So yeah, I mean, there's lots of funny things about it, but people try these really funny things to try to stump people, but then it ends up being something that works against them because they think they're being so clever. Really not. It becomes some because it's not a person trying to guess your password nowadays. Now it's applications. So now you've got, like you mentioned before, AI logic and regular computer processing, and it just uses consecutive characters. It finds out what it is and it tells you what it is.
I think for the viewers listening in, it's would you give your house key to a stranger? Number one,
If I
if
lived in
your if your password is easily guessable, if that's the right way to put it, today your phone, if that password is easy to guess, you are in for major trouble, right? Bank transfers can be done on phones. You know what I mean? Trading can be done on phones, right? People can tweet something which is libel. So the dangers are absolutely horrific of someone guessing an easy password and then completely destroying your digital life. And it's only going to get worse as we embrace everything digital. So it's absolutely crucial to take this particular topic. I know it's been done to death, but the reason is we're still discussing it, that people are not listening.
So there's another topic that I think fits very well with this, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it, and that's cloud infrastructure or infrastructure as a hosting for business resilience and continuity. What are your thoughts on that? Do you believe that that's something that's a good thing for businesses to have to put their infrastructure up in the cloud?
Wow. another very good topic, very controversial. And I think, as in any technology, there are pros and cons. Um, on balance, and again, there are many caveats and assumptions here, folks. Good question, Steve. I think on balance, if you're a small and medium organization, the you going to the cloud allows you to leverage um, the investments that the cloud companies are making. Am I making sense? Right?
Might want
Because,
to break that down a little bit.
sorry,
You might want to break that down a little bit.
what I mean is, if you go to the Googles, Amazon, Microsofts, IBMs, etc., these organizations have hundreds, if not thousands, of people in their security teams,
Mm-hmm.
right, and IT teams. So you are leveraging that power, that knowledge, to help you run your business, but also keep it secure. So, on balance, again, there are caveats, but on balance, yes, I think going to the cloud, not expecting miracles, you still got to have common sense. You still got to enable, as we have discussed, 2FA, etc. But I think going to the cloud for majority of small, maybe medium enterprises is possibly a good thing.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, my business does infrastructure hosting and everything. So, and I think that for small and medium sized businesses, obviously there's always a risk, but I think it's also more cost effective for them because there is, they don't have to pay thousands of dollars for servers, and now having the people to maintain them, the physical maintenance is no longer an issue. Now it's okay, just the digital maintenance where your IT person will have remote tools that'll go in there and okay, let's make sure all the updates are on board and let's make sure that we have all of our firewalls in place and all that. And I know that this is off topic, but this is something that I really want to impress upon the users at home and everyone
Mm-hmm.
who's listening at home. Don't depend on your company's firewall to keep you safe. Make sure you have your personal computer firewall on. If you're running Windows
Mm-hmm.
comes with Windows firewall. Usually it's turned on by default. Leave it on. If you're using something else, put the firewall. You don't have to go into the big, getting a Norton firewall or a McAfee firewall or anything like that. Just make sure you've got something in place that supplements
Mm-hmm.
company's edge firewall.
Absolutely correct. I think, again, just to keep it sweet, I've got 5 kind of things that they can follow. One is make sure your software is up to date every time, because that's the other thing criminals love is old, outdated software. Um, you know, protect the password, protect the credential, change your default passwords. If you do buy a baby cam or a nanny cam, whatever they're called, uh, if you can't change the password, don't buy it, folks. Right? Very important. If something's too good to be true on one of these retail websites, you can get 12 CCTVs for $100. Ladies and gentlemen, run away. Right? Um, because most likely you're not going to be able to change that password. If you can't change that password, guess what, folks? It's going to have a default password, which a criminal from the internet can easily log in and watch you. Right? So these common sense things, as I said earlier, in my opinion, not an excuse anymore. Everybody should know these kind of common sense things. They don't have to get deeply technical, but just common sense. Update your software. Don't leave it for 3 months away, right? Change your passwords. Protect your credentials, etc.
There was speaking of the outdated technology, there was a joke about what happened with CrowdStrike. Because a lot of airlines had gone down and everything, and again, I want to reiterate this is a joke, so don't want
Mm-hmm.
any airlines getting mad at me. But the joke was Spirit Airlines was the only one that was still up because their whole company runs on a Commodore 64, so it was impervious to a CrowdStrike.
Fair enough. Okay, a good one.
So yeah, so outdated technology does have its place, but in real world, you definitely want to make sure that everything is up to date because um, you know that when vulnerabilities are discovered and they're released. I mean, there's the CISA forums and all that. When those emails go out and saying, "Hey, there's a critical vulnerability out there," they're doing it to help you, to help protect you. But the bad actors are the first ones looking at it because, like, oh look, hey, Cisco now has this, or Microsoft now has this, or IBM now has this, or whatever. So now it's something that they're looking at, that they're going to try to exploit as fast as they can before companies have a chance to patch or update.
Absolutely. The only other thing I would say to your listeners is, going back to that Japan analogy,
Mhm.
you have to accept that you may fall victim to a cyber attack. And the other thing that they should do is prepare for what does response look like and what does recovery look like, right? Um, Absolutely crucial, but it has to start with acknowledging, oops, that bad things can happen.
Right. Here in the U.S. back in 2022 or 2021, we had the Colonial Pipeline issue where it
Mm-hmm.
was a gas pipeline, and they got ransomware, and they did not have any backup or disaster recovery policy or procedure in place, and they lost millions of dollars because of
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah. Run tabletop exercise. I mean, we do loads of it. We've done close to 300 tabletop or more exercises, and every single one we do is a learning experience, not just for us but also for our clients, because it helps them simulate a real attack but in a safe environment. And apart from being fun, it actually kind of brings home the reality of what would you do if your database was completely deleted today, for example, right? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, if you're relying on a CRM, a customer relationship database or something, and you log in today and it isn't there, what do you do?
Well, I panic and I call my IT guy.
Right. That's the problem. You see what I mean, right? Okay, and that's part of the problem. Oh, don't worry, we have IT, but actually they can't help you either. And that's where preparedness comes, and that it starts with accepting something bad can happen. Because
Right.
only then can you take insurance and also prepare how you would respond and recover.
There was earlier this year, I believe it was in June, it might have been in May. There was an Australian company,
Mm-hmm.
especially speaking about the infrastructure as a service or infrastructure hosting services. And the name of the company is Unisuper. And what happened with them was is their entire infrastructure was on the Google Cloud platform, and somebody at Google hit the panicked and hit the panic button, and their whole infrastructure was wiped out. Now, obviously, Google worked with them to get them back up, but I mean, they lost billions with a B in revenue. Not only the revenue they're bringing in, but they were dealing with client investments, and they lost a lot of that. Um,
Out of no fault of their own, actually, absolute no fault of their own. It
right.
was it was the
Cool.
the hosting company
Mhm.
that owned up to it. They had set that thing to expire after 1 year automatically. Um, Fascinating story, absolutely. But yes,
So I like my version. Somebody hit the panic button, um,
excellent.
but yeah, that's what a lot of things that because we are talking about the pros and cons of infrastructure hosting and the security of it. There's definitely those risks, and so just three risks right off the bat is obviously something going on with the infrastructure hosting company, right? Because there's no company that's impervious to being hacked, unless they're completely offline. Even air gapped devices aren't going to help.
Absolutely correct. Yeah.
And then you have the issue of like you said, somebody managing it wrong where, they're setting something to expire and everything goes poof. But also, if the company ends up going out of business, if you end up being their only customer, you're only paying them $50 a month. Well, now they can't afford to stay in business, and now you're out. So it's always, if you are going to use an infrastructure as a hosting company, you always want to make sure you have backups you can access, so that if something happens here, you can restore here.
Absolutely correct, sir. I mean, I'll give you one simple example. Nothing to do with the big providers, but just one of my friends, if I may, uh, never backed up his iCloud and forgot the password, can't get in, He's lost all his photos. I think he had 5,000 photos. He can't access them anymore, and he never took a backup because everyone thinks iCloud is. And I'm not having a go at iCloud. I'm just saying he forgot his password, and it's locked out, and he's not able to get his access back. So the minor things. If you don't have offline backups, please, folks, whether it's your personal life or your corporate life, offline backups are the savior, or a backup to a completely different website. So we are using AWS, Amazon, back up to Microsoft, and the other way around, or Google.
I am a big fan of educating people with as far as cold backup storage. So, and for those who don't know what that is, the way that I would describe it is, when I'm going in, as a backup provider, that's our bread and butter. Is when we talk to a customer, we say the first thing is, okay, we need to identify your critical data. We need to, if anything were to ever to happen, and we need to get you up as fast as possible. I need a snapshot of that. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to put that on physical media somewhere, whether
Absolutely.
that's Blu-ray,
Yep.
DVD, tape, and I think somebody just groaned when I said tape out there, um, and put it a uh, in a location where, okay, if something happens to the digital infrastructure, well, I've got the tape,
Absolutely.
and we can get you back up and running as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's not you're waiting days for this, or there's multiple obstacles. You need to have something that lives there. You have a physical and digital copy of that snapshot, so that again, if something does happen, oh look, you're right back up. That's the stuff that you can't live without.
And if I may add, Steve,
Mm-hmm.
going back to the IT service provider,
Mm-hmm.
don't just take their word that, oh, it's being backed up. Ask for the evidence.
Yes, that is a common pitfall with a lot of people.
Absolutely. Don't simply go, they'll send you an email saying, yeah, don't worry, everything's in order and it's backed up. Okay, let's see the evidence. Right?
I can't tell you if I had a penny for the amount of
Same
time.
here, same here. Absolutely.
I would be rich enough to own my own private tropical island. I have a lot. I mean, I am in meetings with a lot. I'm in a lot of business networking groups and everything like that, and I will have conversations with people. And the first thing they say is, "Well, my cloud provider backs everything up," and I go, "How do you know?" Because they told me. Okay.
Absolutely. I think both of us could be really rich every time we took a penny, every time someone said that. Absolutely.
Well, we're coming up on our time here. Amar, I
Yep.
would love to just give the floor to you for any final thoughts, anything that you might want to let the viewers at home know about, tips and tricks, anything you like. Um, and I also would like to thank you for being a guest on the show.
Steve, thank you so much, folks. Thank you for listening in. But in summary, protect your credentials, folks. No access, no hack. That's absolutely one of the most important messages. The other one, as we just said, outdated software is a God's gift to cyber criminals, is the best way to put it. And backups, offline backups. And finally, evidence. If you are trusting an IT service provider, an IT person, ask them for evidence. Don't hesitate. You need that evidence so that if something bad were to happen, if an earthquake hit you in cyberspace, you must be prepared to respond, recover, and resume operations.
And have it documented. Have those policies and procedures documented,
Document.
please.
Absolutely. Please, let's all plead.
So,
It's been a pleasure, folks. Steve, thank you so much for your time.
thank you, and same to you. Thank you so very much. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to be on this podcast with us. I can't thank you enough for your time. Folks, if you have any questions or comments, there's definitely going to be a place where this podcast is posted where you can leave your questions and comments. And once again, Amar, thank you so much. And please check out Amar on LinkedIn. His full information will be on the site so that you can find him on LinkedIn. You definitely want to have a conversation in depth with him that will touch more on than what we touched on today. Everyone else, have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.